My name remains Matthew Ocheleka Itodo. Our topic for this moment is buffer. We'll be talking about buffering system of the body. Buffer solution is one that resists pH change on the addition of small quantity of acid or alkaline. The normal physiological pH of the body is 7.4, and buffer solution of the body will try all his best to resist any change that will make the body move towards alkaline or to cause the body to move towards acidic level. And we say that such solution is used in the biochemical experiment too. But for this case, we are looking at the buffer solution of the body, where the pH will be accurately controlled. For a body to maintain a state of normal health, the pH need to be accurately controlled to maintain the pH of 7.4. Body fluid must be protected against changes in pH. For a state of good health to be maintained, the body fluid must be protected against any change in pH. The body pH must remain in the neutral level of 7.4. You know, most enzymes are very sensitive to pH. That when the pH of the body becomes acidic, as the pH is low, so many metabolic pathways, some of the enzymes will be turned off. The hormones will not be able to bind, and so many abnormalities will result. And when the pH of the body moves towards alkaline, means the pH is high. There is also a problem of clinical conditions. And so we proceed that during metabolism, acid and base are produced. The metabolic pathways, protein synthesis, protein degradation, metabolic process for generation of ATP, catalytic enzymes, and so many reactions within the body. Acid is produced and bases are also produced. So in the long run, excess acid or base need to be eliminated for the body to, since acid will be produced, base will be produced as a result of metabolic process, then we need to eliminate excess acid and excess base via the kidneys and the lungs. So in short, the body is protected against pH change by buffering system. So acid produced by the body are carbonic acid, sulfuric acid, phosphoric acid, lactic acid, citric acid, ammonium acid, ketone bodies. And these are the ketone bodies. If you mention ketone bodies, one of the ketone bodies, acetic acid, beta hydroxybutyric acid, and so on. They are all ketones bodies, and they are acid that is produced by the body. We have, for the sake of this buffering system in this class, we'll be discussing about 3 different kinds of buffering system in the body. And one is bicarbonate buffer. And bicarbonate buffer is the major extracellular buffer. Means bicarbonate buffer work at the extracellular level. And if you mean by extracellular, we all know cell, that there is cells in the body. And a fluid surrounding the cell, we refer to that fluid as extracellular level, extracellular fluid. So at that region of outside the cell, around the cell, the fluid that surrounds the cell, extracellular buffer is working at that level. 2. 2 of a phosphate buffer. Phosphate buffers is a major intracellular fluid in the body. Intracellular fluid is a fluid that is inside the cell. If extracellular fluid is outside the cell, then the fluid that is inside the cell, we refer to it as intracellular fluid. And this intracellular fluid in the body, it protects the body against pH change. So with the help of the phosphate buffer, the help of the phosphate is much abundant, is very high at the intracellular level. So phosphate buffer will help to protect the body against the pH changes in the cell. And a buffer consists of a weak acid and also an its salt and the conjugate base. So every buffer that we'll be talking about in this class, it will have a weak acid and its salt and also a conjugate base. Well, what we mean by conjugate base means proton acceptor, means it's a base. Example of such acetic acid. This acid, it can release a proton and also have a conjugate base. This sodium acetate will also do the same. Or a weak base, and the example of a weak base and it is is ammonium hydroxide and then ammonium chloride. So this example of acid, of a weak acid, and example of this a weak base, take note as we proceed. We move ahead, and I told you earlier that for the sake of this class, we'll be talking about 3 buffering systems in the body. One I have earlier mentioned is bicarbonate buffering systems. We say we have 3 buffering systems in the body, and we are starting with bicarbonate buffer system. Bicarbonate buffer system, it comprises of a solution of carbonic acid and bicarbonate ions. Listen carefully now. This is the carbonic acid. Why this one is the bicarbonate ions? So whatever the area the reaction will proceed will determine whether the pH is high or the pH is low. So carbonic acid and bicarbonate ion participate in a reversible reaction. They say the reaction is reversible. If the reaction is going towards the carbonic, it is determined by the pH, and or the reaction will go towards the bicarbonate, it is determined by the pH. But at this level, if everything is at the reversible reaction and in the balance equilibrium, is in an equilibrium like this, means the body is in a state of normal health, or physiological condition of the body of the pH of 7.4. We move ahead. The direction of the reaction determines whether it is rises pH or lowering pH. So the direction, if the reaction will proceed like this or the reaction will reverse back, will determine by the rising or lowering of the pH. So the lowering the pH is very, very important in the body, whether the body is moving towards equilibrium or it will move towards high pH or low pH. Now, this is an equation. I told you earlier this is a carbonic acid and this is a bicarbonate ions. Now, look at it now. Lower pH by releasing the protons ion. To lower the pH of this body means for the body to move towards this acidic level, then the body need to release proton. This proton need to be released from this reaction. This proton need to be released because the body is moving towards acid now. So the concentration of the acid level the body is moving now is high. But look at it now. If there's a rise in pH, the body is rising in pH, means the body is moving towards alkaline, then there is a need to bind to the protons. Because the body is alkaline now, so they need acid, so they need to bind to acid. Means Every acid in the system now have to be retained to balance with the rise pH, so that the body will not be too alkaline. So the body need to retain the acid by binding to this proton ions, and the same thing happen here. Bicarbonate buffering system. We continue. The bicarbonate buffer system coordinate with the lungs and the kidney to help control pH and CO2. Now listen carefully now. In order to bicarbonate system, this is the bicarbonate system, as the name implies, this is it. In order to coordinate with the lungs and the kidney, now it helps to control pH and CO2. So it means the bicarbonate need to collaborate with the lungs and the kidney in order to regulate pH and the CO2. Now, this is what it means. We go back to this reaction. I will explain this to you. Now, this CO2 is in the blood already, and then they dissolve oxygen in the blood. The reaction of this oxygen and the reaction of this CO2 and the dissolved oxygen that is in blood, that form bicarbonate ions, in which this dissociate to form carbonic ion, in which this carbonic ion dissociate to give you bicarbonate ions in release of a hydrogen ion. And now we say, in order for this bicarbonate ion to coordinate, in order for this bicarbonate ion now to be able to help, in order for this bicarbonate buffering system now to be able to help to control pH and CO2, which is in blood, it need to coordinate or collaborate with the lungs and the kidney. How? This is how it happens. To lower pH, the kidney need to excrete bicarbonate ions. And to raise pH, the kidney need to excrete proton ions, and also the lungs have to excrete CO2. Now look at this diagram. Look at this carefully now. At this level, this normal pH of 7.4. If the pH lower towards this side, we have acidosis, and if it moves towards 0 here, that means death of that organism. Then here we are having we have carbonic ion, while here we are having bicarbonate ions. This is the major buffering system. And if the pH tends to move towards this high pH here we have alkalosis, but if you move here, it is dead. So if the pH proceeds this area is dangerous, if it proceeds in this direction is dangerous, it means it must be balanced for the body to maintain good health. Now we'll be looking at the phosphate buffer system. Phosphate buffer system. Now it's a solution of hydrogen phosphate ions and dihydrogen phosphate ions. Now this dihydrogen phosphate ions, if it's in a reaction and dissociate, it gives you hydrogen phosphate ion and proton ions and hydrogen ions. Now looking at it carefully, as we have explained the bicarbonate buffer, the same thing happen here. The reaction that proceeds to liberate this hydrogen, it decreases pH because there is more acid in the body. The acid is higher. The acid is higher. The acid is higher. If the acid is higher, means it decreasing pH. And those to the left increase pH. But if it decided to move towards, this left, we are moving ahead in this class with this lecture. The phosphate buffer system. Phosphate buffer system is comprises of a solution of hydrogen phosphate and dihydrogen phosphate. When dihydrogen phosphate dissociates in the body, it releases hydrogen ions. and a conjugate base of hydrogen phosphate ions. Just like as we explained about bicarbonate buffer. If the reaction tends to move towards this hydrogen phosphate ion is a conjugate base, so it means there's more alkaline in the system. And if there's more alkaline in the system, this need to be released, excreted through the kidneys to make the body free. And so the reaction will tend to drive towards the pH that will be favorable. And if there is more this dihydrogen phosphate, which is an acid in the body need to release this to balance itself. Now listen as we proceed. You understand at the course of this lecture better. As in the bicarbonate system, reaction that proceed to the right liberate hydrogen. This is the right. As the reaction proceed to this right here, it will liberate these hydrogen ions and decrease pH. So if the pH is decreased, means there is more acid. Is that not so? If there's more acid in the body, what will happen? You release hydrogen ion concentration now, because it's the hydrogen ion concentration that releases or causes more acid content in the body. Means that is why I say that the reaction to liberate more acid out of the body, the reaction will decrease pH. And the same will happen if there is more alkaline content in the body. The reaction will tend to move towards the direction that will release the base out of the system. Important buffering system, you can experience it in intracellular fluid and renal tubes. Means the two regions where you can experience this phosphate buffer more is in the cell, which is intracellular fluid, and the renal tubes. Renal tubes, what we mean the kidneys. But to make you, just for you to remember what we say earlier in the bicarbonate buffer. Bicarbonate buffer is made up of extracellular, while this one now will be in the cell. So when this one is outside the cell, bicarbonate buffer is outside the cell, but this phosphate buffer will be in the cell and renal tubes. So in these places, phosphate are more in concentration. So it means the phosphate buffer is part of intracellular fluid and the renal fluid, because at that region the phosphate is more. Why bicarbonate buffer is part of extracellular? Because at that region of the extracellular, bicarbonate buffer, they are more. So we proceed, and they have their function. He said in this place phosphate are more in concentration, and the buffer can function close to this optimal pH of 6.7, 6.8. Means at the intracellular level, as if there is an addition of acid or addition of a base, and the pH will keep on resisting the change, for it to work at the pH of 6.8, it will keep resisting the change to make sure that it can balance that pH to be able to work at the optimal level of 6.8 in the phosphate buffer at the intracellular fluid and the renal tubes. And there is also constant production of metabolic acid that create pH value to range from 4.5 to 7.4 in the intracellular fluid. So because there is constant production of metabolic acid, it will begin to cause pH to begin to range from 4.5 to 7.4 because of constant release of acid into the body, in the cell, constant release of acid in the cell, constant release of acid in the cell. And then the pH that should have been 6.8 or 7.4 will start driving itself towards 4.5. That is what we mean. Now, as we are moving ahead, we are looking at respiratory control of phosphate in the cell. The bicarbonate buffer system is a basis for the strong buffering system. The bicarbonate buffer system is a basis for the strong buffering capacity of the respiratory system. So it's part of a buffering system that allows respiratory systems. So in the addition of CO2 to the body fluid raises the pH. That is, CO2 is acidic. When there is addition of more acid into the body, in a cell, the body fluid raise the hydrogen ion concentration, and therefore it will lower the pH. You know, lowering of the pH is more acidic content in blood at the release of hydrogen ion concentration, and what causes it is this acidic content of CO2 that is released, and the removal of this CO2 from the body has an opposite effect. I know that CO2 is released from the lungs. I think that is one major reason why breathing is part of life, and for life to continue, you must breathe to bring out carbon dioxide, carbon 4 oxide, all in the name of balancing the pH of the body. So to neutralize these neutralizing 2 or 3 times as much acid as a chemical buffering can, it happens faster, and it is faster than as you can talk about comparing to any buffering system, because it is happening in the cell. Now, using this diagram to illustrate better, at this point of pH, we call it is normal and it is neutral pH of 7.4. If the body tends to move towards this region of pH to lower the pH to this level, we have the state of acidosis. If we keep moving to this 6.8 to this region, it will raise to the case of death. And looking at it here, we have carbonic acid. So moving here, we are moving towards acid, high acid content. And the example of such acid is the carbonic acid. Then we are still return back to this plane, moving towards this bicarbonate ions. As we move towards this area now, we have alkalosis, and at 8.0 we are already moving towards death. So
you have been talking to the air.
Yes, because my brother called me.
Okay. So
now we are looking at protein buffer system. Protein are more concentrated than bicarbonate and phosphate system, especially in the intracellular fluid, ICF. Protein is abundantly around the whole body system, even in a cell. All the organelles are made up of proteins. Even the cell membrane is majorly protein and lipids. So that is why we say protein are more concentrated than bicarbonate and phosphate system. Protein buffer system account for about 3/4 of all chemical buffering system in the body. There is a lot of buffering system in the body, and protein buffering system is more than all of them. Protein buffering ability is due to a certain side group of the amino acid residues. Means, look at it. This is the normal amino acid that will come together to form polypeptide. Then from polypeptide, it will form protein. So it is amino acid, chains of amino acid that form proteins. Don't be confused. Chain of amino acid form protein. So we are using this amino acid side chain, the functional group, which is carboxylic group here and the amide group here. These are the two functional groups of amino acid. And then we also have the side chain here, the side chain. We use this functional group and the side chain to explain what happened to lowering pH and rising pH in the protein buffering system. Protein buffering's ability is due to a certain side group of the amino acid residue. This is the amino acid group, and this is the carboxylic group. And this H, the amino acid, is at the neutral pH of 7.5. So if the pH rises, means the pH tends to move towards alkaline. If the pH tends to move towards alkaline, for the pH to move towards alkaline, hydrogen ions is released out of the body. So how will the hydrogen ion be released out of the body now? The hydrogen ion will be released by excretion through the kidney. That is what we mean. So as if the pH rise, means the pH is moving from 7 to 14. And at that junction, the body will be in alkaline medium. And so at that case, because you have lost hydrogen proton here now, the C00H group now have lost the hydrogen group. So here is negative. And the side group chain now, which is the methyl group now, is now negatively charged. So for you to have this negative charge, now the body is said to be what? In alkaline medium. Now let's return back to if the pH falls. If the pH falls, means the body will be in acidic level. As the body tends to move towards acidic level now, to be in acidic medium. Now, what happens here that the reverse is the case? Here, instead of losing hydrogen ion now, is gaining the hydrogen ion, is accepting the hydrogen ion now. Here, look at it now. The hydrogen ion is coming inside. The amide group now become positively charged. The side group now become positively charged. And then here become a complete carboxylic group. Just to recap on this, I want you to understand that protein that buffer system of the body is the ability to resist all changes to pH at the addition of acid or base. That if a slightly addition of acid, the pH will reject it. A slightly addition of alkaline, the pH will reject it, to make sure that it's in a state of a balanced pH of 7.8. And so we also explain three types of buffering system, and then we mention bicarbonate buffer. And then we say to regulate this to regulate the acidic or the basic content of blood, if the body tends to move towards acid, means as the body is becoming more acidic, CO2 and hydrogen proton need to be released. The hydrogen proton will be released through the kidneys, while the CO2 will be released through the lungs in respiration. And if the body becomes basic, a conjugate base, means the body moves towards alkaline medium, the body tend to excrete it, and it will be excreted through the kidneys to balance the body system. And they said it's applied in phosphate buffering system and protein buffering system. Go through it, have a nice day, and if there's any question, get back to us as we explain better. We are here to serve you and to make you understand more. Thank you for listening.